the faster you get to talking to your ultimate client and learning more about that problem, the more successful your company will be.
This is the Anthropology Podcast, the podcast where we optimize the bodies, brains, and lifestyles of entrepreneurs, go-getters, and world-changing innovators.
Welcome to the Anthropology Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Walker. As a naturopathic doctor and anthropologist, I optimize the health and performance of badass women working to change the world as entrepreneurs and go-getters. You know, people exactly like you. Your business, body, balance, and inner badass. These are the themes we are exploring. So my guest today, Samer Abughannam, is an entrepreneur, an engineer, and someone desperately passionate to find a solution to the fragmentation that we are experiencing in the healthcare system here in Canada. If you are someone who has ever looked for support for mental health, I want you to listen up because Samer has a solution. And if you are an entrepreneur who's ever been fascinated about how you can take this idea that you have about solving a problem and actually bring it to market, then we've got you covered as well. Samer has such an interesting background. He's created this incredible platform called Layla, and he has really unique insight in terms of how we can leverage technology and, frankly, good old-fashioned person-to-person interactions to build a business designed for the 21st century. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Samer Abughannam. Samer Abughannam, welcome to the Anthropology Podcast.
Hi, Megan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, it is such a pleasure to have you here as my guest, and we have a lot of different things to start to unpack today. We're gonna talk entrepreneurship and mental health and online platforms and startups and all of those pieces. But before we jump into the nitty gritty, I'm hoping that you can give our listeners a bit of a background on the journey that you have been on that has gotten you to this place.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me again, Megan. And it has been an interesting journey, and I feel pretty good about the place that I'm in. But it was definitely a few turns and life experiences along the way. I'm an immigrant to Canada. I came here, went to McGill. I studied engineering, and I worked a little bit as an engineer. And I found that like studying engineering was really challenging and interesting, but practicing it was kind of a little bit more mundane, and maybe that was just the nature of the job I was in. So went to business school in the US and came back and worked a little bit in finance, and then got really interested in this concept of business as a force for good and impact investing. So I joined Mars Discovery District here in Toronto, which is an innovation center, and was kind of one of the early employees in a group that was kind of mandated to try to kind of build out that market where kind of people use their capital for social impact. And we worked on really interesting projects and created some really interesting investment opportunities. And turns out that a lot of them were in healthcare, because healthcare is, in Canada anyway, and globally as well, is a sector that, still needs a lot of work. And we found that, there's a lot more opportunity for prevention, early intervention, and the current structural models for funding and investment, and even business models were kind of getting in the way. So I got interested in that, worked on projects in diabetes and hypertension prevention, in homelessness and mental health. And then from there, joined an investment firm in Toronto, a private equity and growth capital firm. And my job there was to find investments in healthcare services and technology with mission-driven entrepreneurs and provide them with capital and help them grow their businesses and grow their impact and set them up on a new path for growth. And from there, kind of got interested in mental health through some personal experiences as well, and really picked up on how fragmented the mental health sector is. And this fragmentation, whether it is in the public or the private side, creates a really big problem in quality control because everybody's kind of doing their own thing, and also in access because there's so many things and so many colleges that legislate so many different providers, and pricing is all over the map and nobody's talking to anybody. So as a user, you get confused, even like, where do I even start? And got really interested in this problem, and started thinking with some friends and advisors on how to come up with a solution for that in an easy way that makes sense. And that's how we kind of started Layla. And that's where we are today.
Well, and I agree with you that there is one fragmentation within I think all of the different sectors of health, but sometimes you just have to tackle one at a time. And also this piece that people don't actually know where to start in terms of seeking that additional support. And I find, frankly, even most physicians aren't very good at referring people into appropriate verticals of care when it applies to mental health. Share with people a little bit more about what Layla is, what that platform looks like, and the type of practitioners that are there.
Yeah. So the reason for our existence, or the job that we are quote unquote hired to do, I'm a big fan of Clay Christensen, who is a business thinker, and he wrote a book called highly recommended, called the Competing Against Luck. And he talks about like what is kind of that job that your customer hires you to do. And for us, it's kind of helping make this process to working with somebody that they trust and is a good fit, making that process as seamless as possible. And the way we set ourselves up is that we are a platform on one hand, and on the other hand, kind of like a health practice, in the sense that we're a platform where you can come to us, set up an account, we guide you to find somebody to work with. And the therapist that we have selected, they're really a curated community. We've interviewed them across, today we're across the GTA, from Durham all the way to Hamilton up to Barrie, and obviously a big density in Toronto. And we literally met every single one of them. If they work out of an in-person office, we would have inspected that office and really got rid of a lot of the guesswork that a client would have had to go through before seeing their therapist for the first session. And then we contract the therapist that we like to join our community. So this way we kind of introduce a bit of quality control. And also we streamline the process. So we work with the therapist in such a way where it's so much easier to come to us. You create an account, you provide some information to us about what you're looking for, your challenges, etc. And then there's a free of charge guidance and consultation call with our staff to kind of help you make an informed decision on who you want to work with. And who do you want to work with is interesting. At a baseline, it needs to be like somebody who's licensed, who's free to take on new clients, whose schedule works for you. But then we take it like a couple of more levels. Does their specialization or the therapist's area of clinical interest match what you're looking to work on? And then we even try to predict interpersonal fit in advance of that first session. So really to try to make sure that the first hit, the first therapist you go to, is more likely to be somebody who you want to work with in the long term. I don't know. I think a lot of our listeners probably have gone through this experience where it really applies across all healthcare verticals, but mental health, it's a really big thing. And so we try to kind of minimize or maximize the chances that it's a good fit before you even see somebody.
Yeah, it's super smart because, I say this to practitioners all the time. They're like, oh, well, I think the problem is patients can't afford my care. And that's part of it. And especially with mental health care, it's expensive to work with someone in private practice. But in my experience as a clinician, it's actually not the cost that is the most frequent reason that people aren't necessarily committing. It's the perceived personal risk. It's the vulnerability. It's the not knowing what to expect. And so what I love about what you're saying is you're managing all of those components, which are a significant barrier to care for a lot of people. I think it's really smart.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And yeah, and it's interesting because we've kind of set everything up in a way where, our client is our client, right? There is no third party payer, et cetera. Obviously, some of our clients will use insurance to cover the cost. but we really set everything up to kind of solve that problem that I kind of started this conversation talking about. And by doing that, we offer both kind of online sessions through our app or in person, or a combination of the two, and really try to be kind of client-centric around how we position the platform and the service. And I think, a lot of people find that to be refreshing in healthcare sector. Still learning. We're relatively new, but we're getting some. It feels really good to be able to do something that people value.
I like that. So what percentage of the clients, the consumers who are working with your platform, what percentage of them are opting for a virtual visit versus something that's happening in an office?
Yeah, this is actually something that we were really surprised about. We work with a lot of millennials. That's kind of our most common kind of client population. And they're tech savvy. Like you need to set up an account online with us, et cetera, download our app. It's the majority of sessions are still in person, and it's interesting because we talk a lot about technology and how it improves access, and that's true, and improves convenience, and that's also true. But what is also true is that people are a little overloaded with tech, and I think for important things like healthcare and mental health. People want that in-person connection. They're looking for that relationship, and yeah, like we can just see it through the kind of the preferences of our clients.
Yeah, it's actually really fascinating. We go through this every year. We run live events, and we go, should we just be promoting everything online? And what we realize is there's just this tremendous benefit by being in physical proximity to somebody. And I think we're only going to start to unpack all the different elements of communication that happen between people when they're physically close to one another, as opposed to through technology. But I love that you're giving people the option for both. Samer, I definitely want to come back to the mental health piece, but here's the thing that I'm interested in, and on behalf of our listeners as well, is talk to us a little bit about the landscape of startups with respect to healthcare in Canada, because I do speak to a lot of entrepreneurs, both practitioners and otherwise. They have these really fabulous ideas, and then they really don't know where to go next, or they don't know how to access capital for those initial rounds and that beginning of that entrepreneurial journey. Can you speak to that a little bit, and especially in the context of what Mars has to offer?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there's actually a connection to the tech conversation that we're having earlier. So, I mean, let's start with Mars. Just full disclosure, I used to work there. I don't have a formal relationship with them anymore. Obviously, I have a really good connection with them still, but our venture is not based out of Mars. But there are a network of incubators and support systems here that I'm happy to talk about. Today, we're a member of the DMZ, or the Digital Media Zone, that is connected to Ryerson, and I highly recommend it to any entrepreneur in Toronto. It's a very, very good program. But in terms of healthcare startups, and kind of going from like having an idea to actually having a business, my impression is that in the last 5-10 years, there's been a big push to kind of tech first. Let's build this tech that will make everything efficient and so much better. And it almost kind of goes idea or solution first. And what ends up happening is a lot of entrepreneurs will kind of lead with that, and then at some point realize that what problem am I trying to solve? Like, how do I fit this back into an actual market failure or a real societal need? And then that's when they pivot and things get really hard, et cetera, and they might run out of capital or might run out of energy, and so on. So my perspective is you got to start with a problem and be very empathetic about the problem itself and the people facing it, and not at all egotistic about the solution that you have in mind. Kind of let the market tell you what the solution is, and design your process in such a way where you're constantly learning and adapting. And I think that's kind of what we've done. It allows you to kind of actually get there faster, need less capital. The faster you get to talking to your ultimate client and learning more about that problem, the more successful your company will be. So is that helpful, Megan?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think on a practical level, I've also observed that there's two places where people are really like, I need funding. Like, how do I find funding? It's when they're first starting out. So maybe they have like some friends and family funding that they can put into it, but they don't know what they don't know, kind of like mental health. Where do I go next? And the second place where I've really observed that is people who are actually looking to scale. They're like, great, I got some startup funding and we built our site and we've got a prototype, but like how do I really scale before I'm approaching like VCs and different rounds? So I'm curious in the work and background that you have, where are you sending people for those two phases of their business evolution?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. There is almost like an access problem for those kind of programs. They exist, but they are fragmented in their own way. There's a network of incubators around the city where you get support, and some of them might offer some grants or small amounts of funding. The DMZ, the biomedical zone at St. Mike's, the Techstars has an annual cohort here in Toronto and another in Montreal. So these programs are pretty good. They could be competitive as well, and that kind of that increases the barrier. There are other programs like we're pretty lucky in Canada. There are a number of good publicly funded programs. BDC has funding options. Futurepreneur has funding options for entrepreneurs, especially like in healthcare, looking to build even bricks and mortars businesses. They're able to help out there. So you kind of like need to do your work to find that fit for you. In terms of kind of R&D, the Natural Resource Council, they have a program called IRAP that helps fund innovative R&D and technology development. So you kind of like need to do your work and almost kind of hustle to get there. To be honest, I haven't found that process to be really streamlined. And then in terms of like venture capital and angel investing, that also is an efficient process. I mean, I think that's something that would be interesting for somebody to try to solve. But it is, it requires a lot of networking, a lot of meetings, building trust, building relationships. In my personal experience, I've frankly found it to be way more time consuming than I'd like it to be. It's just kind of a warning for people out there looking to raise capital. It does take a lot of time, and I would think about it carefully because it will distract you from your business.
Yeah, it is. It's actually a really, having worked in the health tech sector previously, there's a lot of pieces you actually have to manage to get something off the ground, which is why it's so exciting that you guys are where you are with Layla. Tell me about your vision for your company. Do you want to expand this across the country? Is this something you envision happening internationally? Like, what impact do you want Layla to have on this generation of people looking to improve their mental health?
The reason we exist is because we want to be a place that makes it just so much easier for you to get the right help. From a client perspective, and then from a provider perspective, a platform that helps you practice better, so you can save time and do the things that you're really good at, and work with clients that are a good fit for you clinically. We're in the GTA in person today. Our virtual platform is available to anybody in Ontario, and we work with a lot of individuals in smaller towns and in rural parts of the province. Our goal is to be national, to be kind of a go-to destination for mental health support, that kind of ultimately connects back into the the broader system if we can find the right ways to do that. I will admit that is not easy. And it's interesting when I talked about how mental health is fragmented, you did mention that, well, the whole system's fragmented, and sometimes healthcare system's fragmented, and sometimes you kind of actually need to pick somewhere to start. And that's exactly what we did. We started with private practice psychotherapy. The more integration we can achieve in the broader health system, obviously the more we would deliver on our kind of mission to be that kind of go-to destination to get the right help. And we're starting to do some things, early days, but we're starting to do some things. We're working with some family physicians as a starting point, but we're still not there.
They say that you are the product of the 5 people with whom you spend the most time. Imagine you could spend time with hundreds of fellow entrepreneurs and go-getters looking to up-level their business, body, and mindset. The Anthropology Collective does not belong to us. It belongs to you. Come hang out with us on Facebook and let us collectively inspire, support, and cheerlead you towards your vision for contribution, your commitment towards better health, and your journey of mindset mastery. We are in this together. We are entrepreneurs by birth, by choice, and by mission. We are the Anthropology Collective. Search for us on Facebook and come join your tribe. It takes time. It takes time to build up those relationships and that level of trust. And listen, physicians are great, but they are also overworked. But this remains an area, certainly for I'm a naturopathic doctor, and we work with hundreds of NDs across the country. And the biggest question I get from my patients when it's the random emails or random texts are, where can I find a therapist? And so I think this is, I think it's a valuable resource for people in the traditional system to have access to, but also for my colleagues to be aware of as a resource to be able to send their patients for. And especially for those people, like you mentioned, who are in smaller towns. And I know one of the things that's a concern for people when they are living in a smaller town and maybe there is one mental health provider is there ends up being a concern about privacy. Or maybe there's
conflict of interest.
Absolutely. Or maybe it's just not the right fit and there aren't other options. So, I really think that this is an amazing option and opportunity for people to take their mental health to the next level.
I agree. I agree with you. And I think if we think about an individual, like your mental health and physical health and everything is kind of related, right? So the more we can talk to one another as, wellness professionals, therapists, physicians, etc., the better, and the better it is for the client, and the better it is also for you as a practitioner because your client is kind of being taken care of in a collaborative way, right?
What are the what designations do people need to have in order to be a part of your community online in terms of practitioners?
Yeah, this is a part of the big confusion, at least in Ontario, and I imagine there's certain confusions like that in other provinces. But in Ontario, the therapy or psychotherapy is a regulated act, and there are multiple colleges that allow you to deliver that treatment. The ones we work with are registered social workers who have clinical training. Registered psychotherapists who are members of the College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario. And we are also in discussions with some psychologists as well, which is another college in Ontario that now requires PhD level training. Our clinicians all have master's or master's equivalent level training. Really interesting, and they're obviously all licensed in good standing, and we would have interviewed them and validated their training and clinical experience before bringing them onto our network. What we found really interesting, Megan, we looked into research and talked into experts, is that and there are like up to 500 peer-reviewed studies that support this, is that the outcome. The actual health outcome in psychotherapy is predominantly driven by relational factors, interpersonal factors. So I'm talking about empathy. I'm talking about your skills in building collaboration and consensus as a therapist. I'm talking about the cultural adaptation of your treatment methods, so that you can relate more to your client. Those aspects actually drive up to 75% of the outcome in mental health, and that I don't know if a PhD buys you that. Maybe you get more training in how to build the skills, but really, like, that's why we focus on that kind of master's level social workers and registered psychotherapists, and we interview for those skills. Not only we interview for those skills, but then we try to match accordingly to kind of to try to increase that interpersonal fit as much as possible. And then we collect feedback from our clients in a methodical way so that we're continually managing our community of therapists relative to those interpersonal skills.
Yeah, it is so complex, right? All of the things that are going to drive those outcomes for individuals. And even in looking through your site, like, again, sometimes as a consumer, our biggest challenge is decision fatigue and knowing what information we need to, like, what information is actually going to help us make a better decision. So I love that part of this is not just, can I put a bunch of practitioners on my site? It's, can I create a system that creates the most successful alignment between a seeker of care and a provider of care. It gives you so many places where you can start to go.
And this kind of goes back to, as a founder entrepreneur, it takes time to really get to really the crux of the issue you're trying to solve. And it took us a while. Like it hasn't always kind of been easy, but you have to persevere and really kind of focus on that, on the real problem and what's the evidence behind why the solution kind of works, right?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, Samer. I love what you have. I love what you have built, and the collection of people that you have behind you. I think there's just such tremendous opportunity here to really shift how people can access the mental health that they need. A quick note from our sponsor, Badass Fuel. 2 years ago, someone asked me what supplements I take to maintain my health, my energy, and my edge. And they were surprised that I only took 4 things consistently. For myself and my patients, there are 4 basics that support, at a foundational level, nearly every system in our body. In my quest for the highest quality ingredients and the easiest system for consistently incorporating supplementation into my routine, I formulated and manufactured my own line of foundational supplements. My intention with this line was first and foremost quality, but equally important was a system for taking and naming the support that ease the incorporation of supplements into your life. Trusted for myself and my patients, under the guidance of your own healthcare provider, I'm excited to invite you to check out our foundational product line, Badass Basics. You can learn more or order the products yourself by visiting www.badassfuel.com. I feel like we are at a really great place for me to start to throw something at you that I call my KPIs or my key performance indicators. So just like we have them in our businesses, I believe that we have them in how we live our lives as well. So I'm deeply fascinated in the things that enable us to be entrepreneurs and the stories and the facets of our personalities that are common and different amongst us, risk-prone, fascinating people looking to build businesses. So I've got a series of questions I'm going to throw your way if you're ready for me.
Let's do it.
All right. First question. What's the most impactful book you have ever read?
Most impactful book. I think I shared it earlier. Clay Christensen has a series of books on innovation. The last one, Competing Against Luck, for me, just gave me a bit of a roadmap in the early days that just kind of gave me confidence in something to lean on. I really appreciated it.
Yeah, I love that concept. I wrote it down. Yeah. I think I'm going to put it on my list. What is the one thing you are most consistent with respect to your own health?
My own health.
Your own health.
For me, it's sleep. I mean, I like, that's so important. And, it's really hard to always sleep well. But I try to at least give myself that 8-hour time block. And then obviously some nights I sleep better than others, but I need to give myself the time and like, just have some good hygiene leading up to it. And frankly, right after it, when I wake up, I'm increasingly doing things where, like, my phone is not right next to me, etc. Do some breathing, get some coffee, etc. It just, for me, it's like an anchor habit that when it doesn't go well, everything else kind of breaks down.
Yeah, I love those anchor things, right? And it's so critical that we know what they are for each of us. What is something totally badass about you that people would not otherwise know?
Badass. So badass is a weird concept, but I play the bagpipes.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I like it. It's kind of like a strange thing to be. You can't really practice it anywhere because you would be disturbing a lot of people. But yeah.
So where do you go to practice the bagpipes?
It's been a while, actually, but I used to be part of a marching band, so we just kind of practice together.
That's awesome. What do you do for fun or play?
I love my friends, so we spend a lot of time with friends. It's nice to kind of live downtown. That's kind of my main thing, like sports. That's the other thing that I really enjoy. Recently had some like challenges, but I'm getting back there. So I'm trying to get back into squash.
And last question for you, entrepreneurism. Are we born this way or do we learn to become entrepreneurs?
Oh, totally the latter, in my opinion. Like for me, I've had a few mentors and some books that I read and things that I learned along the way that kind of teach you how to do it. And then I also think that starting a company could be a very methodical exercise where you just kind of identify a problem, have a hypothesis, go test whether you're right, and then kind of build around that. The one thing that maybe we're born with is kind of risk tolerance versus risk aversion, but actually how to do it is something that could be completely be taught.
I love this question because everyone's confident in their answer and the answers are never the same. Samer, it's been a really,
that helps you.
Right? It's been a really fascinating conversation. Where can we send people to follow up on what you are doing and to learn a little bit more about the care they can receive at Layla?
You can check out our website, layla.care. And if you want to be in touch, you can email us at contact@layla.care.
Amazing. And I know you guys are also on Instagram. We will hook everybody up with all of these links in our show notes. Samer, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Megan. Take care. Thanks for having me.
Hey, bosses. If that interview resonated with you, I would love your feedback over on Apple Podcasts. Every single review, every comment you leave makes a huge difference in terms of the Anthropology Podcast being able to reach more people, help more people, and pour more individuals into our vector and vertical of leadership that we are using to try to change the world. Now, if you want to discuss a little bit more about today's topic or other topics that affect us as leaders and go-getters in this world, come on over and hang out with me in the Anthropology Collective. In this Facebook group, we have women from around the world dedicated to living a life of purpose, a healthy life, an intentional life as we cruise through and engage in our missions here on planet Earth. I would love for you to join us. I'm excited about what you do. Until we meet again next week, go build something amazing.